Greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. My item is based on the IMF and the Minister of Finance. You know, we've heard of stories about IMF and the sanctions attached to IMF. Now, this is what we got from a minister. The minister says IMF has given us permission to employ 41,000 workers. IMF now is sanctioning our country to employ. Eh? It says the modern economy is premised less on the natural resources but the brain power of its citizens. Ati ama natural resources dayakwatya nchito eba musokotwane economy ya lero ile bomba n'obwongo. We all know that 50% of our economy actually goes to personal emoluments. Minister Musokotwane said that the funding was agreed upon with IMF. The minister goes on to say that we have seen this in places like Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia. They have no minerals. Countries like Hong Kong, by the way, Hong Kong is not a country. It's a city. For them to build an airport on the ocean, and owing to the fact that they didn't have land or space, they imported sand from Indonesia to actually set a platform for that airport on an ocean. Unless Zambia trains youths, give them health to the young generation, and the future of Zambia's economy is in jeopardy. First, prior to him saying all this, Minister Musokotwane said Zambia has been struggling with unsustainable debt since 2016. He said the manifestation of the problem has been through continuous loss in the value of kwacha, rising inflation, loss of jobs, and many other problems. You see, inflation only comes in as a result of there's a lot that really attributes to inflation, but I'll give a very practical example, like in the case of the exchange rate. What really contributes to our kwacha losing its value is, I mean, we don't manufacture anything; we actually import a lot. We import a lot. If you look at our government doesn't even run any institution that generates money. Eh? Way back in the counter days, we used to run milling companies, we used to run mines, we used to run the chain stores like ZCBC, Nyek stores, Mwaiseni, swap spinning mills, and we used to have gineries and different institutions. But when these guys came in, they started selling. And from the time they started selling these things, they've never thought of industrialization. Even the time Bam Sokotwani was brought into existence by HH, I was really shocked. I spoke so negatively about the appointment of Bam Sokotwani. In fact, that was the first appointment the president made. You see, the issue of them saying no, Zambia is supposed to work on the brains of the youth or the mindset of the youths and to give them good health. You see, some of these things, I mean, it's an indication of incompetence. When you say use your brains, yes, much as you can have the brains, but if you don't have the raw materials, I mean, what can you do? If you don't have the resources, what can you do? In simple and straightforward terms. But that msokotane teti balandi ati yo Hong Kong pakupanga airport yale senda nicho yali kwete olupia taile muku vula fesandi ku Indonesia yali stay import lupia lwale ingira mapakusenda shani pakusenda ilya sandi ku Indonesia. Mwamfwa nomba imunga mwalanda tama natural resources is something that we shouldn't bank on, but to bank on the brains. So what when you use your brains? Eh? dati fimbi fintunga mlera ndaimo mwayikalira fyo kulufyanya napale mwalera ndati awe bayuthi ababena balera ndafyo yakwera tabensha nokwensha ekimwene fyo formulate batiyo lekeni ukulanda power ikopa because the economy the modern economy is not premised on is premised on less the natural resources and stuff. Oh, it shouldn't be the case. Let's make use of what we have. The issue of us borrowing should be a thing of the past. This is what the president even said before he was voted into office. He said, we're going to make use of what we have so that we don't borrow. Ah, mwandi ni tata na imwe. I'm back again. This is a continuation of this. I didn't want to do a longer voice note because it creates a lot of issues. Some people don't want to listen to something lengthy, so I've come up with a different piece. And then, so in realizing that the debtors are crippling the economy, he approached IMF to seek assistance out of the quagmire. So basically, Musokotwane says IMF assistance is required for two reasons. The first reason is that IMF and other international bodies can help to broker a deal between the Zambian government and the creditor or those that the government owes, that is, restructuring purposes, a payback, or be able to borrow. I mean, are we still in the era of even thinking of borrowing again? When the president said we need to make use of the resources that we have. These words came from our president, who's now the president. Then he was in the opposition when he said we don't need to borrow. We need to say bye to borrowing. Look at IMF. IMF is an organization that's really controlling our country now. Because if Musokotwane can say we've been we've been given permission by IMF to employ, is it IMF's obligation to actually tell the Zambian government to employ the people of Zambia? No. So when you look at the restructuring purposes where they could pay back and be able to borrow, and reason number two, intervention from IMF will enable the country to get into IMF program. This will enable Zambia to get or to have access to long-term concessional funding. Funding will be zero interest. Basically, 1.4 billion has not been approved by IMF yet. You see, when I say incompetent ministers and incompetent PSs, this is what I mean. With all the due respect that needs to be given to the elderly people, and knowing that I come from a morally upright family where respect is key, I'm kindly asking the Minister of Finance to say that, silence is golden sometimes when you don't have something positive to say. And what is really wrecked the stability of our economy sometimes is the issue of papers. People say no, credibility falls on the paperwork that you have. They also consider your grade 12 certificate. Some people acquire those papers. I mean, a paper is not the brains. Sometimes people can have that certificate through dubious means. We've seen a lot of politicians acquiring those just recently. At Obadi Lembako Varia 8 points, Varia 6 points. But it's a shameful thing to that to see that we're embracing something that is so retrogressive, and we're failing to embrace something that is going to actually build our economy. Why should you say we need to have access to long-term concessional funding? Why should you be funded when you have something? And there's an issue of vendetta coming to Zambia to actually enrich themselves, and Zambia is failing to make use of what we have, but they want the so-called investors to come and get what we have. There must be something wrong with you, Daddy. In simple and straightforward terms, there must be something wrong with you. If Zambians are not talking, I'll talk. Let's voice out and tell these leaders you call leaders, eh? To say that Zambia doesn't belong to somebody else. He's talked about a Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia, and all these countries like China. I mean, nobody went to China to develop China. China was developed by the Chinese guys. Nobody went to Japan to develop Japan. Japan was even at some point faced with something that maybe if Zambia was to face the same it's going to be a different story altogether. But that aside, all the developed countries were not helped by any other country for them to develop. They developed because they saw it fit to develop their country. It's the same thing with Zambia. It's us to develop Zambia, not somebody else. The issue of investors, they come to steal, they come to loot our country so that they can build their countries. If you look at Russia, Russia is gold and its reserve, which was gotten from Sudan. And Sudan is still wallowing in poverty. Congo, France is being enriched by Congo. All these countries, if you look at them, they did what they thought was all right for them. But at the end of it all, Zambia will never be developed by any other person apart from a Zambian. So, Batatava Musokotwane, in an admire that you are incompetent and you don't deserve to be a minister of finance. We need to find somebody who can change the whole scenario. This is uncalled for. Tatava echi chitamulemuna tichalo chiretewe kamulandu wa Batatava Musokotwane. Key ministry ni finance. Every operation of governance is anchored on Ministry of Finance. The hospital cannot operate positively if the Ministry of Finance is crippled. Bushetwalala ndenshi pakti mumfue. Mwa fya tempo chimpali wa Musokotwane teti vale rufya tuwa bomfya obongo nga tapali fya kububomfesha. Nangu walikuwa to obongo nga ta ukwetendera mashakwira kuskulu ta wakabutwale ko obongo bobe. Echo mfire mwaishi baimwe tata nangu walikwata mano shani ngata ukwete chakubomfya pwali amano tapali fika chitika. So imu mwalanda no, the modern economy is not premised on the natural resources. There must be something wrong. Why are these investors coming to Zambia if the modern economy is not premised on natural resources? Why are they coming to get our minerals? There must be something wrong with you, Daddy. Mushte step down, tapado formulate step pampand.
Mukalamba wandi wasosa bwino sana nga twafikonka ine nalilandile na bulia bushiko kutilati bushene nanu watulowa ukoko tungasanga ichipatala chikalamba pali private pharmacy so mulenje ba imitite chifo mchipatala shaingira mu private pharmacy lya mwabika pa chipatala pa UTH pali ba pharmacy iya muntu pa UTH mukati mwa UTH parapene twingirira twali umfokwe batiyo bamativini bali kwata CT scanning machine iyo ibomba pantu ya mu UTH taile bomba mwamono fo batushita efilianseka nangu ni kumaini mukalambwandi hatiyo Zambia leshisha maini ichalo chafilo kuraninga maini chashitisha kuli individual busheni chimule tontonganya bwino sana mumitwe senu. Zambia ama leaders yali ngomfya chulo shishenganda ayamkoda mwamalasha liyabwera mkoda malasha aisa kongwesha efya chitana wa Zambia valida ba Mzambia wabula mainu kushisha kuli individual ukulayilangisha fe omuntu ukwebata ule tontonkanya bwino ichalo ichakwata abantu abengi mulera ndati chalo cha Zambia tamulera ndati company ya Zambia nga twalolesha abashitama maini muno mu Zambia my individuals teko bati fyalo fimbifisa mukushitama maini muno awe nangwa ati yo South Africa aisa mukushita maini muno awe nangwa ati Canada aisa mukushita maini muno awe my individuals. If you look at Glencore, I mean, is run by just characters. Nanomba pa balera ndatiyo balefa okushtisha mopani. Mopani yo balera ndatiyo investment whatever. Mwe bana bakwarisa please. Tule umfwa kwensoni limoni mo. If you twalese kaba PF, mwene nuwa PF bali tusheko no kupoka ku KCM. Bapoka ku KCM bara running anangu bale iba. Bati indalama shale nda muno mwine mu Zambia. Imwe ni shiteti mwishe mulandi atikanshi na ifomo pani katupele consortium ya Zambia ama Zambia nzibengi aba kwete ndalama tupele abena Zambia bashitechi shintu umufulofe weka fye munefu ndalama ilio mwalashisha ku bantu aba panze shile ndalama tashakulaikala muno mu Zambia mwikaliro kulanda no we want to revamp the economy. How do you revamp the economy when you're selling things to people who will be taking their money to their countries? Bushebutu tunshiba milo wa mwe bana bakwalesa. Nani wa milo wa mwe ntungulushisa pampando mu Zambia. We muntufe bwino na 5. Wabula aulebe pa abantu ati yo tulefwa tutwale economy pamulu pakushisha ekintu kuli foreigner. Ushe foreigner ngapa ngechindala male kalika mu Zambia. Pakuti tukwate economic development. Mwana bakwalesa sometimes common sense. Tayaba common kuli imwe na ngushani. Hawe na imwe fintu fimukula ibweramo. Ngobo alolesha pali Kagem mining. Kagem mining ndi abakamba Zambia yakwatamo 25%. Elo njipusheni at Emerald inonshitanishinga. Emerald bakamba it's fetching something like 2 point something million dollars. $2.1 million per ton. Not even per ton. If you look at it, Ndala, mwaloresha pali kopa is fetching now $10,000 per ton. Nichi socho munga yako. Pali bwino mwachitamano ya basata. Yale ubachitireko pali lap green. Basanga barupea banda baristisha. Na kaje mkuine mdala. Batulile ndala mapama. Pa mtuwe. Mwalibula mwabika malonda paranikani pa gold mine. Gold inonshita. Gold ileshtika per kg. It's about 65,000 something dollars per kg. But kwisa sangati muno mzambe tuwabula na malonda tuwabika na pa mine. Ushe kwena nani walo wentunguru shikala mu State House. Ushe mu State House mwaliwe chikopo. Mwaliwe chibande chako ate obukopo chingira mu ntunguru shinga ingira munani kane mu State House. Awe na imoti weremo. Zambia tatifilo running a company. Inga chako bati mulebula ma individuals obo muleshti shako ma companies. Tuweba kwa tinakali mwatabena Zambia fee poba. If ya rufienye inti ungurushisha fumako, tatulefuwa watatawa chofo mulufianye lero imwe. Awe, tuwakane fio. Na alibebele na Musokotwane pa kwa manati. Musokotwane ili ashira privatization muno Zambia tatulelifuwaya. Na imota tatamwale mono kwe bati uyu muntu mulele tapa untu umwale shita privatize ama companies iyo Musokotwane ale bomba na barabi shitishe upgrade shitishe nutu wampa nutu wa shala lelo mwula tiyo ba Minister of Finance na lelo you expect things to move so well awe na imota tatefo tuwapi ingenefi